Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this programme today we'll be discussing a wonderful initiative that brings injured British service personnel together with their Israeli counterparts together in what is called the Veteran Games, and this is their story. Warm welcome to the programme, and we have two very special guests joining us today on the Middle East Report. They're both from the West Country and they're both former Royal Marine Commandos. So I'll start off with my first guest, who is Andrew Garland, who is the CEO of the Veteran Games, and together with Steve Richards, again a former Royal Marine Commando. Welcome to the programme. Andrew, I'll start off with you. Firstly, can I say it's an absolute pleasure to have two former Marines on the Middle East Report. I have tremendous respect for armed forces, so thank you for the years of service that you've both done in terms of defending the realm and for keeping us all safe. So big thank you. Andrew, do you want to share something about why you chose to join the Royal Marines, and what was it about the Royal Marines that really attracted you to this regiment, famous regiment, I should say?
Okay, yeah, I was working, so I left school, unlike Steve. Steve, I believe you joined straight from school, but I was working after I left school, and it was really a chance meeting with a Royal Marines Commando who was the brother of a friend of mine at work. He said, my brother's back, do you want to go out for a beer with him? So I went out for a beer with him and had a chat with him, said, what do you do? And he explained what it was about the commandos. And the only reference point I had was growing up, there was a neighbour, a man called Mr. Trussler, who had been a Marine in Korea, was quite an impressive character, and also the Commando comics. It was that straightforward. Now, I had no real interest in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force for no other particular reason that, it didn't really interest me. So service life didn't really interest me. I had no background in the family, so there was no background there to sort of draw on in terms of service life. But what did attract me to the Royal Marines was that shallow, was they were commandos, which I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool.
That is cool. That is cool. Don't have to question.
That'd be pretty cool. And it was the idea of a challenge and adventure. That straightforward. Money didn't really interest me. I didn't even think about what I may or may not get paid. It was just to go forward and trying to achieve something. So in those days, it was quite quick to get in. Subsequently, I worked within the Commando Training Wing as a training officer, and things have developed, and they're quite slightly more scientific approach. But when I joined, as long as you passed the initial test, passed the psychometric tests, you pulled forward. So as an example, 63 of us joined up, and 6 months later, 9 of us passed out.
Wow.
And that was just a relatively routine way forward. The wastage rate is slightly lower now from my time in Commando Training Wing, and they approach training in a different manner, which is a far more sensible way of doing things. Basically, when I joined up, you were thrash witless, and that was the idea, and you didn't expect anything less because you were joining this club. You expected it to be hard. And if you got to the end, more by luck than anything else, and you were still hanging in there, great.
And of course, then you get the famous green beret that the Royal Marines wear.
Yes, yeah, and that was my focal point really, and that was the idea, to get that green beret, to become a commando. And I originally, the idea was to serve for 3 years, which is the minimum period at the time you could serve for. 37 years later, I left. So I spent 37 years in the Royal Marines almost equally spaced between non-commissioned and then commissioned. So in the ranks and then commissioned as an officer, and then the officer for the final 18 years.
Wow, superb, excellent. And Steve, warm welcome to the programme. And share with us your story, because you are a Bible-believing Christian as well. So share with us two stories. One, how you came to faith in Jesus Christ, and the other, how you became a Royal Marine.
Thanks for asking.
That's a pleasure.
Yes, I joined up at the end of the 70s, and it was leaving school. You have to make a decision, and I'd had some family members talk about it, but I didn't really know a great deal. Then I saw the film on a careers awareness day when I was 16, and I saw the skiing and I saw the commando ethos played out, and I saw the amphibious warfare and special boat service, mountain leaders, and just a demanding lifestyle with a great challenge to get a green beret and pass the commando tests and go forward. So as a young man, you want to fly, you want to do everything, and I was a rugby player, and the thought of a hard challenge to get a green beret was something iconic, and of course brought up on the commando magazines, which you watched, and the other comics, and the great tales of daring do from the Second World War, which were just something that you grew up with and heard neighbours and family members talk about, and we want to play your part really in doing something for the country and for yourself, and it was a good career choice. I passed my training after 36 weeks, and it's a long set of training. I got my green lid, and what to do next? And I chose to go to the Mountain Winter Warfare Specialist Unit 4-5 Commando in Scotland, and Mountain Winter Warfare became my specialisation. And we were protecting the northern flank back then, before the wall came down, and it was a demanding but interesting lifestyle. We'd spend 6 months mountain and winter warfare training, and the other 6 months in and around the Mediterranean doing amphibious warfare operations and deployments and so on. So it became a great lifestyle, and I was brought up as a Christian with a very Christian family, and I left and joined up. Christianity is still there. We still have our faith leaders, padres as we call them, chaplains, and they appear and they're with us, and they do the commando course, and they're on the front line as well. So it's always around, bootnecks as they are. Faith, even if they're a believer, it's not something to talk about. But when you start going on serious operations, it does make you think about your mortality and maybe what might happen to you if you don't make it. I personally was able to follow my faith. There's always a church somewhere. There's always a chaplain or a padre somewhere, and there's usually something on a Sunday and on a tent somewhere on a deployment where there'll be a faith leader taking some form of worship, and it just became very important to me. And of course, sometimes some of these things, because we are talking about Iraq and the Middle East, you were in the Holy Land or in the area of the Holy Land, and suddenly the spirituality of it all became much more meaningful. You felt closer to God and closer to Jesus because you were in the area that he served in. Sometimes being in London, you can feel, or in the urban area, you feel a long way from Christianity at that time. So I was managed to continue it. And the one thing that I suppose really echoed, I went through the ranks, became a sergeant, and on the sergeant's course, there's a bit of training about field burials. It suddenly brings home your mortality. I never thought about having to bury bodies of fallen because the battle has to continue and it can go on for years. And so I learnt about the burial, and it played on my mind, and so I started carrying a Bible, and I always carried a Bible with me on every operation, every deployment. And I also carried a small card, which was our call prayer, and it was often used remembrance services, some Sundays. Well, I dedicate this to the veterans and serving throughout, especially the British Armed Forces and the Israeli Defence Force. Eternal Lord God, who through many generations has united and inspired the members of our corps, grant thy blessing, we beseech thee, on Royal Marines serving all around the globe. Bestow thy crown of righteousness upon all our efforts and endeavours, and may our laurels be those of gallantry, honour, loyalty and courage. We ask these things in the name of him whose courage never failed, our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks for giving me a chance to read that out. I carried it because I just didn't like the thought of burying. I didn't like the thought of burying my men anyway, of course. But if I had to, I wanted to make sure they went in the ground with some sort of spiritual guidance and words said over the grave. So that was something that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very moving. Thank you. And after ask you, Andrew, 37 years as service to Her Majesty and to the Royal Marines. You must have some incredible stories to tell. So can you just share one particular story that comes to mind of your service with the Royal Marines?
Okay, not much of a challenge then. Yeah. I think I've got a story which is sort of an illustration of just how small the world is. So I'll share that one if you like. I served in the Falklands, so I was involved with a small group that retook South Georgia prior to the main landings on the main Falkland Islands. So we'd retaken South Georgia. The following day, the Santa Fe, the submarine which was hit, had been tracking that portion of the task force. That was hit and that was brought in on the surface and it was captured and tied up. And we were in a place called Grytviken, which is a small harbour on South Georgia, actually where Ernest Shackleton is buried. So there's a small church there. It was originally a whaling station. Church it was still there. There was a British Antarctic Survey team there who'd quite sensibly disappeared a few weeks before. Church and the graveyard with his grave. So quite an interesting place. And I was patrolling in that area with another Marine the day after we'd retaken the island. And there were a number of civilian ships that were alongside the task force who were coming along behind to do various tasks. One of them was a seagoing tug, so a massive thing that would take ships under tow if they were needed that. Anyway, I was patrolling with this with a Marine, just two of us in the area. We were walking along, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a group of people in civilian dress. And they were probably, 80 metres away. And they were just about to step into an area that we hadn't cleared. So the whole place had been sown with anti-personnel mines by the Argentinians. We cleared certain areas and areas we hadn't cleared. They were just about to step into this area, I think taking a shortcut probably towards the church or whatever it was. So I thought, right, I need to stop this. So I shouted a particularly expletive laden command for them to stand very, very still, and at the same time, for added dramatic effect, I aimed my weapon at them. Had the desired effect. They turned around and shot off in the other direction. So, fast forward another 28 years. I'm working in Portsmouth, then as a lieutenant colonel. Looking after or heading up a project to deal with or try and promote advanced mental and physical robustness in the what we call the dark blue Navy, so the Royal Navy as opposed to Commandos, Royal Marines, which are part of the Navy. So dark blue Navy as part of the moral component of operational capability. Okay, stay with me. Anyway, so as part of this, we decided amongst the team that running a social marketing campaign would be useful. So we engaged with a civilian company probably 10 miles away from the base in Portsmouth. I'd been along to the initial meeting and spoken to the team there. Came along for the second meeting and they said, our director would just like to pop down. This guy came down, didn't recognise him. He said, Andy Garland? I said, yeah. He said, we went to school together. I said, oh, right. I didn't recognise him. Obviously, I was a bit of a face. He probably wasn't. No, so he was a year behind me in school, so he'd recognised me from school. He said, you pointed a weapon at me in the Falklands on South Georgia. And he'd been a merchant seaman at the time, a young merchant seaman, in that group of people that I'd pointed the weapon at. So
What a coincidence.
Small world, small world.
Incredible. And Steve, would you just share as well the impact of the commitment that you had to give your heart and put your life on the line on many occasions? That just share with us the impact that post-traumatic stress disorder has had on you, and because this very much links in with what we're talking about with the veteran games. If you share, please, your experience.
Well, I'm very, very happy to. I served a long career, and some people, one incident is enough to write them off, give them post-traumatic stress. They maybe have physical injuries at the same time, but I was the type of person that. When we talk in terms of having a bucket and the sort of drips keep coming in, and so whether it was in Northern Ireland, whether it was in Afghanistan, whether it was in Kosovo or Bosnia, Iraq, or other types of environment, civil disturbance and things like that, and just these particular things, and start to fill up, and the memories remain, and you deal with them. And I've been around for long enough that you just did deal with them, and some people turned to drink, some people had disastrous personal lives because it wasn't talked about. It just was part of it, or everyone was just angry, and I was probably the type of person that just got more and more angry as I internalised things. And but in some ways, I coped. My personal life did suffer, all the deployments, and then couldn't relax, and so on, replaying things in my mind, or something would happen innocuously, and it'd take you back. And so there's that sort of talk, and it's an often thing, that you physically came home, but mentally you're still on the battlefield, and that's a typical situation. So things happened, whether it was being shot at or being blown up, or seeing colleagues and members of the team being blown up, and dealing with it. You deal with it because the training cuts in, and you carry on, and you go on, and you can't just check out. But it does take its toll. I was in. And there's an example there. Was it Afghanistan? Was it Iraq? It all becomes a bit of a blur when you're being shot at or blown up, and that's a serious point, really. But it was. I mean, I was showered in shrapnel, but I survived. Got on. In fact, it was a disaster. There was we were developing a hydro plant for the Iraqis, and it really was a problem. But anyway, put that to one side. Carry on. Looked after the individuals who were there. But anyway, so for me personally, it was then going home and trying to relax and say, "You have all this leave, and it seems wonderful." But yeah, it's just reminders of even going shopping, and that there are things that are around you, and I won't talk too much about them here. Military people know probably what I'm talking about, but it just takes you back, and you want to enjoy the holiday, but suddenly something takes you back, and it is a real problem. The thing that probably took me over the edge was in West Africa. I was attacked by a sort of machete-wielding mob. I escaped, but there was carnage. As you can imagine, there was gang warfare, all on drugs. So I'm lucky to be alive. And that was probably the last thing. And I came to London, but I got particularly ill. And so, but for me, there's probably 20, 25 years of stories going on in my head, and never having a release for them. Got very physically ill with, there's been yellow fever and malaria and so on, and just the body just gave up. It really, really did, and I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't, clean my teeth. You just become a casualty, and I was still hiding it. I'd become an officer by then. It was easy to hide these things. You just, you talk about your in-tray, you disappear, I'm on a course, I'm away today, and so on and so forth. And you can hide it. But I collapsed, and in 2010, I was sent to Headley Court, which was our rehab unit, and spent a lot of time there. Ironically, for me, though it was often the best place, it became the worst place because it was full of a lot of amputees who were getting great recovery, great rehab. There's no two ways about it. But for me personally, being around amputees and people with missing limbs was the catalyst for the machete attack, and it just overwhelmed me, and I really just couldn't cope, and I was taken out of that environment to just stop the memories coming back, which it slowly did help, and I had a lot of psychological treatment, and something called EMDR, which I have to say worked particularly well for me, and slowly but surely I recovered. I started to recover, although we had a terrible machete attack in London, Fusilier Rigby, while I was having treatment for at the time, and in fact, as it turned out, I'd seen the attackers the day before coming out the mosque. They were doing their last prayers, preparing for the fight, to the attack on an innocent British Army soldier, where he was beheaded, and it was a terrible thing. So anyway, this is maybe 10 years on now, I suppose. I've had a lot of treatment and some great help, and I feel that my personal health and fitness is in a good place.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It couldn't have been easy, so really appreciate that, and I think you give a lot of hope to a lot of viewers that suffered from the same thing, so thank you. And Andrew, do you want to share with us about the Veteran Games and how you got involved in them? Because you're wearing the flashy jackets with the logo of the Veteran Games on them. Just share with us what they are and how you got involved and how this helps to bring injured British military veterans together with their Israeli counterparts in Israel for a special games.
Yes, certainly. So I left the Royal Marines at the end of 2015, and after a period of time went to work for a investment company in London. And the boss of that company, I was working directly for him, is a really good guy, and he does a lot for charity across the board, and more specifically for veterans, and then zeroing in on that for the Royal Marines charity. So very active in the veteran sphere. He was involved with the guys at Beit el-Hakem in trying to set up the Veteran Games. So they'd had an idea of what they'd like to do, and he basically had a chat with me and said, Andy, can you meet these guys and see if you can help them out to try and get this rolling. So I met Spencer Gelding, who's the CEO of Beit el-Hakem, a couple other folk. They laid out their broad idea, and in my head I'm thinking, this is fantastic. This is a really good idea, and I'd love to be involved. So I had a meeting with them. Then they followed up about a week later and said, could you help us? Fast forward. So yeah, so I joined them, and together we put together the plan, designed the program, and pulled off the first games in 2019. Right. From that, we then had a break for COVID, unfortunately, and then went back in 2022, and the last games were in 2023. Yeah.
So share with us your thoughts on the IDF and the way that the IDF deal with those injured IDF soldiers, and of course they're fighting against the Islamist terrorist organisation now Hamas in Gaza after the biggest massacre of Jewish people that we've seen since the Holocaust. So just share with us your experience of the IDF and being in Israel.
I don't have any direct experience of the IDF themselves. What I do have is an understanding of their capability and ability. I've never worked alongside them, so I can't vouch for that. But they're a very well armed, very technologically advanced, and very capable armed force. That's what I can say without fear or favour. In terms of the way they look after their veterans, the setup of Beit el-Hakem is fantastic, I think. Yeah, it's really good. But there are a lot of reasons why it works so well for them and perhaps wouldn't work as well in the UK, not least the size of the population, the fact that the population are all closely wedded to the military. You know, it's a matter of existence for them. They're fighting for their homeland, and they're fighting in their homeland for their homeland. Everyone, or the vast majority, have some experience of service life, will have served in one way or another. And the centres are set up, as I understand it, purposely so that no one is more than an hour away from those centres. But the way they work is great. So they have the full gamut of rehabilitation for people who've been either victims of terror or have been injured in combat and that sort of thing. But alongside that, there's very much a community atmosphere to it. So you don't just go there and get rehabilitated, you're a member, and then you're a member for life, and your family are a member. So they've got creches for the youngsters, and you can go along there and just use it almost as a community centre once you're a member. And I think that community environment is great. So you've got people who've been injured. I remember bumping into a particularly unfortunate guy. I think he was 90. This is in 2019. I don't know if he's around still, bless him, but I think it was 96, something like 94, 96. He was up playing snooker, and I got chatting to him. This one I did, went out on my first recce actually, to look at the centres. And he'd fought in the War of Independence, been injured, and each conflict subsequent to that, still going strong. And he was no longer being treated, whatever. But it was just a centre, and he met all his old friends, old comrades, and fantastic.
Amazing. So let's have a look now at this incredible initiative that's called the Veteran Games, that brings both British military personnel together with their Israeli counterparts together for a special time of sport and fellowship and solidarity. Let's have a look.
We're off to the Veteran Games. Heard great things about the country and about the games and stuff, so yeah, can't wait to get there.
We are happy and excited in this opening ceremony of the Veteran Games 2022.
Morning, sports day.
Day 2 of the Veterans Games, we're all ready to go again. Bring it on.
We're off to Jerusalem. It's a bit of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go and see something so historic. So yeah, everyone's really excited.
This afternoon is a little bit of time to pause and to reflect as we remember all those who are buried here who gave the ultimate sacrifice.
We will remember them.
All the veterans here together, remembering people that have gone before us. If it wasn't for them, you know, we wouldn't be here doing what we're doing.
Events like this, we've been asked because I'm a veteran of the armed forces. It shows that I am somebody.
Just being part of that and taking back the experiences of knowing that it's not just myself, there are others as well across the world and other countries that are maybe going through similar things, and making those connections.
And we're comrades on the battlefield, but we're comrades on the sports field as well, and I felt very connected, and we've got a lot in common.
The Veteran Games has once again brought together a scattered tribe of veterans from across 2 countries and gathered us here tonight under the banners of inclusivity, military fraternity, compassion, and the organisers' overwhelming desire to give the veteran community an opportunity to not only conquer in their chosen sports, but to conquer themselves physically, spiritually, and mentally.
And there you can see for yourself what an incredible initiative that is to bring injured British military personnel to Israel to meet their Israeli counterparts and strengthen our armed forces together with the British and also the Israelis. And also their families were invited and had a good time as well. So it's excellent. I have to ask you, Steve, we saw you there in that excellent video. So you're there in 2022. What was your experience of the Games, but also being in Israel as well? And being a Christian, obviously this is the centre of our faith because it's the Holy Land.
It was an incredible experience, and as I think about it, it brought my 2 worlds together. I went just after COVID. I volunteered before then, but things were delayed. And during COVID, I was on my own, but I continued doing some training for it, which actually gave me a bit of a goal while COVID was on, which was excellent. The Veterans Games itself, it was the unexpected thing was, although we're there to compete because that's what we do, that's what part of being in the military is all about, your ethos to compete and to win. But there was a family element to it as well, and I took my daughter, which was a great privilege to do. We'd been very much estranged over the years for my deployments and time away and living apart, but we went together. And she's a Christian, and we went together, but in essence to compete, to go to an interesting part of the world. But then we started doing the sport. I was particularly interested in air rifle, and I managed to come 4th, beaten by 3 fantastic Israeli IDF shots. 2 of them only had 1 arm, which put me in my place, which was they were superb at what they did. But it was a pleasure to compete, and that's when it kind of, yes, we were there to compete and medals were put out, but it was stressed many times. There was no medal count, there's no which team won, was it the Brit team, was it the IDF team? It wasn't like that. Because in the background of every competition there was a great family forum, and then although we did sport in the mornings, then in the afternoon we had time to explore, and there were opportunities to go to markets, and we went to Jerusalem as a group, went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was a wonderful opportunity for my daughter and I to get very close, and we prayed together and lit candles, which I never expected, but the sense of Christianity washing over me was immense and life-changing. I even got a chance to pray at the Wailing Wall, which I wasn't really expecting, but that was a nice experience, and left a prayer in one of the cracks on the wall. But prayed alongside IDF who were there, rifles slung, and praying on the wall at the same time. So I had this incredible experience of sport, which I love, and sport in recovery and rehab is such a strong driver, and has brought many people back from, you know, when they thought they'd never actually get going again and to recover. And then for my Christianity to sort of be reignited in a very real way, in a very, very spiritual, and you could sort of feel the Holy Ghost just just filling your body. It was like I didn't really expect. And then we went to the Dead Sea as well, and it's just viewing Jericho over there, signs to Bethlehem, all these key signposts that are in the Bible, and you perhaps just pay annual respect to these words and these places, but don't really know them because I've never visited. But suddenly the spiritual side of the visit became very real, and I found myself kneeling and praying every night for the veterans that were there, for the IDF, who I made some very good friends, and as I say, we're on the firing line with the air rifle, and I actually say I was giving them a good run for their money. I was pleased with my shooting, but there's on one side there's a veteran of the '67 war, on the other side there's a veteran of Yom Kippur, and you know, I am a student of military history. I've studied the battles, you know, especially since '48, and so on, and lessons learnt and everything else. And suddenly I got people that actually were there, and it became real, and it was an absolute pleasure. And I exchanged my details. Anyway, we made friends, but it was, you know, just occasional emails and so on. But then, of course, 7/10 happened, and our friendship and connection just exploded, really, and it was a great chance to reach out to real people that were affected in a very real way, and show solidarity.
Amazing. Incredible. And Andrew, you must be very proud to have a testimony like Steve's here of your hard work with the Veteran Games, and to knowing this is what it actually produces, to actually give veterans, British veterans, hope, but also gives them a deeper understanding of the challenges that Israel face and the challenges that the IDF face, which is very different from, say the Royal Marines. So just reflect on what Steve has just said, really, about his experience of the Veteran Games.
I mean, it's wonderful to hear. It is wonderful to hear, because you hope that you know what's arranged or what's put on will have a positive effect on the veterans, and that's what we set out to achieve. But I think, as a team, in terms of the organising team, we were generally amazed, really, following the first games in 2019, at just how impactful it had been for many of the veterans. So the testimonials, not only for the veterans themselves, but from their families, which is a really important part of the games, and that's why we include the family. So if we'll take a veteran, so we take 60 veterans, or around about 60 veterans, and we'll take partners or carers. Some of the veterans have full-time carers, so they'll come along, or they've got partners and children, they come along. So the total party is around about 180. And it's really, really important, I think, and that was one of the things I was keen on when we were setting it up, that we involve the families, because quite often the families will take as much, if not more, of the strain than the veteran. So when the veteran comes outside and you see them, you know, when they step outside their front door, that's the best version of them. What we don't see is them lying in bed because they can't get up that day, or daddy sat in the corner crying, and the children don't know why. So the family really do take a lot of the stress and the day-to-day support of those veterans, and so it was really important to bring them along as well. And sometimes, in some cases, the family, so the partner and the children, would benefit more than the veteran from the opportunity. And also it gives them the opportunity then to meet other families, for partners to discuss the issues they're having, and realise that there are lots of other partners in the same position, dealing with the same support issues within their own particular family group. So it breaks them out of that. So they're not sat there thinking they're alone. They then build those connections, and some of those connections have continued and continue now. So that mutual support, which is all part of it, and we've taken now 560 souls.
It's incredible
over the 3 years we've been. So,
wow. And I can also imagine the fact is that you charter a plane together. And that you know, there's also friendships that are made there with former veterans and also the families, and then the friendships in Israel as well. What do you think the impact that has on strengthening ties between our armed forces and that of the IDF and veterans?
I think certainly from a veteran's perspective, it's interesting actually. A veteran's a veteran, really. Certainly, sort of if they're from a society with shared values, and so it's really great to see how things develop. So initially it's sort of how you, and by the afternoon or the morning of the next day they're best mates, because they've shared each other, and they've found that common ground which is there just under the surface with all veterans. So that's really good to see, but it's perhaps not surprising really, because that's the way it is there. We can be quite an insular group in terms of our experience, because our experience sits outside the mainstream experience, and so it's not something we necessarily talk about or feel comfortable talking about, or it feels relevant to talk about in everyday life, and that's probably a good thing. But when you get together with other veterans, they instinctively understand, and you're able to chat, and you're old mates within 24 hours.
Amazing. So let's have a look at another excellent video that highlights the incredible work of the Veteran Games, and this will give you greater insight into the impact that this has had on British veterans visiting Israel.
After I spent 16 years in the Royal Air Force Regiment, I was medically discharged.
I got diagnosed where I had a labral tear, so at the age of 40 I had a full hip replacement.
I really lost my confidence, my self-confidence. I couldn't really talk about it to other people. I felt isolated and lonely.
As a veteran, well, you've got to come to terms with, again, a weakness that you've got, and it affects me every single day.
Going to Israel and taking part in the Veteran Games is very much me thumbing my nose to MS and saying, you're not going to stop me doing the things that I want to do.
My goal is to see another perspective of how people get on with their lives as a veteran.
I'm not going out there to be the first. I'm going out there to participate, to soak it up, to learn, to move forward, be part of it.
We're off to the Veteran Games. Heard great things about the country and about the games and stuff, so yeah, can't wait to get there.
We are happy and excited in this opening ceremony of the Veteran Games 2022.
This event, par excellence, describes the amazingly close and warm relationship that quite rightly exists between our two countries.
The Veteran Games is about partnerships. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Our hope is that you leave here proud of what you have achieved, reinvigorated, and mindful to take on your next endeavours.
Morning, sports day.
atmosphere is amazing, it's calm, it's just phenomenal. The food is amazing, the culture's amazing. It's way above what I expected.
Day 2 of the Veterans Games, we're all ready to go again. Bring it on.
We're off to Jerusalem. It's a bit of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go and see something so historic. So yeah, everyone's really excited.
The whole experience has been amazing, just to be in Jerusalem today, but in fact just to visit Israel as well. Just breathtaking.
And so it's so wonderful to have you all here. So welcome to your second home. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And please, please come back.
Well, good morning everybody, it's day 3 of the competition. It's team day today, Brits and Israelis mixed together. We can't wait.
The competition stuff is great and that's brilliant, I love that. Being with the Israeli veterans, sampling the food, the culture, Jerusalem, the stuff that you would never do in your normal life.
There's this sort of a kind of a bond, I think, between the British and the Israelis, and I've got great admiration for the Israeli Armed Forces. So, yeah, it's been great, really good experience.
Almost makes you want to be part of it yourself. It was absolutely incredible to see British veterans enjoying themselves with their families with the incredible hospitality that Israel offers. Just share with us what you learnt, Steve, from the way that Israel deals with post-traumatic stress disorder. And what did you learn from the Israelis in being there?
I was involved with air rifle in particular, although there was swimming and gym and other things. My injuries didn't allow me to really compete in the same way. It was interesting, the number of people, there were physical, there were injuries doing air rifle, but there were quite a few with PTSD. And I found with air rifle, and same with archery, that so it's using sport again for the positive rehab effect, but the concentration that the sport gives you, and almost like it's like a Zen-like quality to hit the target and be a good athlete. You do need to control your body and your thoughts and your mind, and it's suddenly got to settle. And there's no time for your mind to start flick-flacking around and remembering things that are intrusive or things like that. You've got to focus on the target and get the job done. And there's a very physical result at the other end. Did you hit the target or not? So the more you do it, and it's only a snap, it's a quick shot, and it's done. But when you start doing 10, 20, 30, 40, 60 shots, spend a whole hour, 2 or 3 hours, suddenly there's a whole lot of good. And what was interesting then, talking to other competitors, British as well as IDF, there were quite a few with mental health traumas and post-traumatic stress that were using the power of air rifle and another sport as well in particular, but just to calm the mind and to settle the mind. I was impressed with this idea that I think there are 5 or 6 Bet Al-Hakem centres around Israel. You're 1 hour from it. Even during the war, at the moment, friends of mine are still going to the centre. It's still open. Well, there's a lot of sadly new cases that they're looking after, but they're still training and they're still using sport. And the nice thing about it is the pool's open. The one we visited in Tel Aviv is an Olympic-sized pool. It is phenomenal. We're playing water polo and normal front crawl and normal sports events, swimming events, but they're taking their families. And so even while the war is still playing out in Gaza, the Bet Al-Hakem is open, and my friends are telling me and sending me pictures of the happy times that they're actually having and breaking out. He's doing some sport, the family are jumping in the pool, and it was just great to see that they're not disappearing in all the angst and the atmosphere, the bad atmosphere that's there. So it was great to see them letting off steam.
Amazing. And Andrew, just share with us the incredible impact that the Veteran Games has on British military personnel and their perceptions of Israel and the IDF.
I think it's, as Steve has explained to an extent, it's the majority of us have grown up with an understanding of the Holy Land, of the the key places like Jericho, Bethlehem. I had a Christian upbringing. I was a head chorister and crucifer growing through, so church twice every Sunday. So names and places, and also I had an interest in the Crusades. Rightly or wrongly, and so I'd read a lot about that as a youngster, and so all those key points. I went out on the recce, and the first evening we went for a meal in Jaffa, in an Arab restaurant in Jaffa. So back in end of 2018, beginning of 2019. Yeah. So those sorts of things for me, from a personal perspective, phenomenal. And I think it's the same with a lot of the veterans in terms of that. It's somewhere you wouldn't necessarily consider visiting. And I think it's really, really positive in showing a true representation of Israel as a country and Israel, the Israelis as a people. Because unfortunately, we unless you've got a specific interest or you visit, then the only information you'll get is from the media, and that can quite often be less than positive. Regardless of what's going on, stand fast conflict at the moment, which has obviously had an impact. But prior to all that, even so, the general, so in general, the media aren't necessarily overly helpful, and so there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of the situation. And whilst the visit is not at all, and the games are not at all politically motivated, it's really useful, I think, for people to get a better understanding of the situation there. The country itself and the people, and the people are overwhelmingly welcoming. We've obviously got that really close affinity with other veterans, regardless of where they're coming from. But there's certainly a good level of respect between the two groups, between the Israeli veterans and the British veterans, in terms of capability. And overall, it's a really positive experience. I think it's a great opportunity to show a true face, or let people see for themselves and make their own minds up, rather than seeing what may or may not be pushed out within the mainstream media.
Very good way to put it. And Steve, I have to ask you. Sadly, we see today that the Israelis are facing an existential threat, not only from Hamas in Gaza, but also from Hezbollah, and of course the nation now is reeling. It's in shock. You could even say that Israel's in post-traumatic stress disorder after the horrors of October the 7th. And I personally have seen the devastation caused by Hamas on October the 7th. I've seen the kibbutzes that were destroyed, the music festival that attacked innocent young people, and they were just murdered in cold blood or gang raped by Hamas. And the crimes that Hamas committed were genocide, crimes of war crimes, and yet our mainstream media and others like to demonize Israel and the Israeli Defense Force. But when you actually look at the IDF and you look at the British Armed Forces, particularly in recent years, share your thoughts within a minute and a half of the the same enemy that Israel and the British face, whether it's from Islamic extremism or from totalitarian regimes such as the Taliban in Afghanistan or Saddam Hussein's forces in Iraq?
Well, the Islamic extremism, as I've been part of different fighting forces that we've been tackling that in different parts of the world for maybe 20 years now, and to see what's happened and to see Hamas develop their capability and to commit the most evil and heinous crime imaginable has been a shock for most right-minded people. For me personally, and having been very close to the IDF and had these conversations, they are very professional, and to see how the media demonises the Israeli and the Jewish populations in particular, and the IDF, that they're committing some sort of genocide is beyond the pale. The genocide is coming from Islamic extremism, not from Israel and the Jewish people.
Excellent. And Andrew, I have to ask, with about 2 minutes left, we've got an extra 2 minutes for the programme, so because you guys are special and you're doing a great job today, we're extending the programme. So share with us how our viewers can get involved and support the Veteran Games, or if there's any veterans watching this programme that has been inspired by the excellent initiative that you're running, bringing Israelis and British military personnel together. How can they get involved and how can they support the Veteran Games?
I think the first signpost would be our website. I think you've got that. I don't know if it's up on the screen at the moment, but you've got the that there. So have a look on the website. There's an opportunity there to donate there, or even get in touch directly with myself. So that's andrew@veterangames.co.uk. So drop me a line. We are entirely privately funded, so we are very, very fortunate to be supported by incredibly generous individuals and trust funds. So we get nothing centrally. It's all by the generosity of others. So we're always
wonderful. So Andrew, Steve, thank you so much for being my special guest on the Middle East Report. So you've done yourselves proud, and also you've done the Royal Marines proud as well. So thank you very much. And I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. Sadly, this story gets very little media traction, but it's so important, particularly the difference it makes in sending our military personnel who have been injured or suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder to Israel to partake in these games and build a stronger relationship between Israel and our armed forces. So thank you for watching this week's edition of the Middle East Report.